Human Journey Colloquia Series. In this series, we invite speakers and topics that engage fundamental questions of our human experience. Tonight, we are delighted to introduce Dr. Dale Atkins, who will discuss one of our most important human capacities, the capacity for empathy and compassion. Join us now live from the campus of Sacred Heart University with your host, Dr. Kara Kilgallen.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kara Kilgallen, and I am the chair of the Department of Languages and Literatures, as well as an English professor here at Sacred Heart University. And I'm truly delighted to introduce a longtime colleague and very dear friend, Dr. Dale Atkins. We're truly honored to have Dr. Dale Atkins here tonight. In this COVID world, in the context of this COVID world, we could all really benefit from more compassion. So Dr. Dale Atkins provides some essential wisdom in this area. Dr. Atkins is a psychologist, psychotherapist, an author, and a distinguished lecturer with over 40 years of experience working with families, seeing patients, teaching, and focusing with her patients and clients on how to live a more purposeful life. And this is so central to Sacred Heart University's Human Journey and this Human Journey Series colloquium, as well as our university mission. Dr. Atkins is the author of 7 books, as well as countless articles and journals that are all written for academic, professional, popular, and public audiences. Dr. Atkins appears regularly on NBC's Today Show, CNN, and various other news forums and formats. She continues to present throughout the nation and world, and we are experiencing Dr. Atkins's wisdom here virtually tonight. So we really are having a great privilege to do so. I would like to just share with you, before I turn it over to Dr. Atkins, some recent words of praise on her most recent book, The Kindness Advantage. And these words are from Myung Lee, the executive director of Fund for Cities of Service. And I think these words really speak so powerfully to why Dr. Atkins' message is so crucial to today's world. So her words are, in times of discord and polarization, kindness is a family value that can often be overlooked and underestimated. But in truth, few parental responsibilities carry more weight and bring more joy than teaching children, as well as young adults, the power of flexing their own kindness muscles. Steeped in research and brimming with practical tips, the Kindness Advantage provides parents with a blueprint for nurturing empathy in young children while offering real-life stories that both instruct and inspire. This is a thoughtful guidebook for parents, caregivers, and any adults looking to help build happiness, raise good citizens, and create harmonious communities. I am delighted to present Dr. Atkins tonight. She will speak for a little while, and then we will open it up to questions and answers. I also want to encourage you to use the chat function during the Q&A, but I'm really very pleased and delighted and honored to present Dr. Atkins this evening.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much, Kara. I'm delighted to be with you, and it's wonderful to be a part of this incredible forum. I'm thrilled to be a part of the Human Journey series and want to thank Dr. Loris for her vision in creating such a series. And I also want to thank Unal, who has been so helpful with all the technology and helping me really just feel more comfortable as I speak with whatever aids I will be using, a few slides. So Kara, it's a joy to see you. And during this time that we've been planning this and postponing, the world has indeed changed. When we first connected about talking together, there was nothing like COVID. People were having their then normal lives. And we've seen so many changes. So the talk that I was going to give is related to, but not exactly the talk that I'm going to give. And that's because we all have to be flexible. There are changes going on, and everything that's happening is new. So I'd like to ask all of your indulgence, because really when we think about kindness, we're thinking about how we want to treat people. And generally that has to do with the golden rule, which is something like, let's treat people the way we'd like to be treated. And if we can remember that, we really will have so much of an easier time dealing with everything that's going on. There was a slide that was presented, and Unal, I'll ask if you'll put it up again, of my niece and I, my co-author, Amanda Salzauer, and she and I wrote this book together. Amanda is a social worker, and as I said before, my niece. So sometimes when I talk about the book with you this evening, I'll talk about we and our and us, because it was a totally collaborative effort. So thank you for putting that up, and we'll get the next slide in a little while. But I wanted you to meet Amanda, and because this really is her work and my work, her research and my research. So we wanted to write a book about kindness, which we did several years ago. We had the thought to write it several years ago because we were seeing an increase in bullying. We were seeing people not be kind. We were seeing role models whose language and whose approach to people was often offensive. And we couldn't understand what was happening to empathy, what was happening to compassion. We also wanted to pay attention to all of these charitable people in the world. Who were they? And what was it about them that made them charitable, that made them want to connect with other people and to make a difference in the world? In fact, our first draft of this book was raising charitable children. It was about raising charitable children. But then as we got into the weeds, we realized that we didn't really want to write about just raising charitable children, because we interviewed a lot of people who were charitable. And we noticed that they all shared so many qualities and characteristics, which I will talk about in a little bit. But one of the things that really was fluid throughout was they shared kindness. And they all had a certain relationship with kindness. So we said, well, why don't we really write a book about kindness? And since we are born with a propensity to be kind, we don't really have to teach children how to be kind. We just need to nurture that which is within us. We need to nurture that which is within all of us. And then everything shifted, the focus shifted. So before I go into the book a little bit, what I'd like you to do, and Unal, if you could put the first slide up, I'd like you to think about kindness, and I'd like you to think about your personal history and your personal relationship with kindness. So when you think about someone who is kind and compassionate, who comes to mind? You may want to do this exercise by first closing your eyes and taking a breath and just think, who's kind? Who's compassionate? It may be someone you know now. It may be someone from your history, someone you knew when you were a small child. It may be someone who was a teacher, but just think of that person. I hope you have the image of someone now, and I'd like you to think about what you observed in that person. And what did you learn from them? And were there ways that you felt you could be like that person? And now, today, this evening, as you think about this person, can you describe what makes them seem so kind? And I'd like you also to think about when you were a child. Who do you remember being kind to you? Maybe it's the same person. And what did that person do? And how did it make you feel? When you were growing up, I'd like you to think about, how did people in your family show that they cared for others? And think about ways that you show kindness to others when you were a child. What did you do? And how did other people respond? And where is kindness and how is kindness demonstrated in your family's everyday life? And now I'd like you to think about ways that you notice other families and other people, friends, colleagues, other students, or in your workplace, who show caring for others. Thank you, Unal. I just want to mention that afterwards, you can have access to these handouts. That, by the way, is a questionnaire that we have in the book. We have a lot of exercises for people to do in the book. So before I even get into the book, I want you to think about kindness and your own experience with kindness from the time you were a small child. And some of us were not so fortunate to grow up in families where people were kind to us. Yet we understand the importance of kindness, and who do we look towards? Who do we look towards now? I know many of you are students at Sacred Heart, and one of the most wonderful things that you have is a service learning program, and I know that it's quite robust when COVID is not happening, and I hope that it will soon become much more an integrated part of your everyday world. But I'd like you to think about the value of volunteering and doing social learning and service learning, and what it means when you have the opportunity to do that in an intergenerational environment, so that you really get to see not only people who may not look like you or have a different life experience, but their life now is very different because they've probably lived many more generations, many more decades than you have. So what can you learn about them? What can you learn about yourself through the way they problem solve, through what their wisdom is? So being in an intergenerational environment and using that as a setting for role models is very important. I want to read you something that was said about service learning, and I believe it's so important. Service learning is a popular and meaningful way that students of all ages can become involved in community service through their schools or college programs. And this next part is from Barbara Jacoby, who is a leader in service learning. She defines it as a form of experiential education in which students engage in activities that address human and community needs together, with structured opportunities for reaction designed to achieve desired learning outcomes. And when studying the impact of these programs on students, researchers consistently find that students participating in service learning programs demonstrate significant gains in several outcomes areas, such as attitudes towards themselves, attitudes towards school and learning, civic engagement, social skills, academic performance, increase in empathy, and desires to be good leaders. So the findings really bolster the views of educators who echo these benefits and understand that leadership and empathy and kindness are true outcomes of participating in volunteering and service learning. So I hope when the service learning programs get back into full swing, that you will all continue to participate in them. And if you haven't, that you will begin to participate so that you can really see for yourself what some of the benefits are. And I'd like you to think for a moment of who your role models were. Maybe it was someone who volunteered and you were the recipient of whatever they were doing. Could have been a coach. It could have been a religious leader. Who are your role models? And who are your role models now? And how do you deal with role models who are positive role models, but who make poor choices? Where is your empathy? Where is your compassion? How do we allow for all of us to be human? And what does it take to be kind when people disappoint us? Amanda and I, when we were writing our book, came up with a definition of kindness, which I'd like to share with you. It has to do with paying attention, showing patience, communicating respectfully, and showing compassion for others. It's very important to notice kindness, and it's very important to be compassionate towards yourself, particularly during the time of COVID. It is very important to take care of oneself and be kind to oneself so that you really can be kind to others. To understand what may be causing a bit of anxiety, what may be making you scared, What may be contributing to feeling overwhelmed? What may really interfere with concentration? All of these things are important to notice, and they're important to pay attention to so that we don't beat ourselves up and say, what's the matter with me? I used to be able to do this, or I'm always able to do that. And turn off that critical, that self-critical voice and speak to yourself in a way that you would speak to a scared child or someone who's anxious about something. Hopefully you wouldn't say, what's the matter with you? Come on, you can do it. Perhaps you might envision yourself putting your arm around them and speaking in a calm and encouraging voice and helping them to know that number one, they're not alone. And number two, they're not stupid. And number three, that they have someone to believe in them and who can help them along. This is kindness. This is self-compassion. This is taking care of yourself. Perhaps you might even touch your own chest, your own heart. Say, it's okay. It'll be all right. I can get through this. Might take me a little longer. I might have to take a walk and come back and get a really clear thought, but I know I can do this. Be kind to yourself, and it will help in being kind to others. Notice kindness. I like to say to people, try to look at the world through a lens of kindness. It can be very difficult now. There's a lot of things that are going on in the world during COVID. And we see people being unkind, but we also see people being helpful and considerate and patient, perhaps not so much with themselves, but with others. And we can teach ourselves. We can nurture these qualities in ourselves. So I said before that when Amanda and I were writing the book, we noticed qualities that were in these charitable people. And the first book's title was The Alphabet of Kindness, because, or the ABCs of Kindness, we were back and forth, because we had 26 characteristics. And now I like the second slide, or the third slide, whatever, the one that talks about the fundamentals of kindness. And I'd like you to look at these fundamentals of kindness with me, because this is what we narrowed it down to. We narrowed it down to 10 fundamentals of kindness. And I will read them to you, and perhaps we can get the slide at some point. And they are acceptance. Thank you, Unal. Acceptance of ourselves, of others, no matter who they are, no matter how different they are from us. Commitment, that when you're kind, you are committed to seeing something through, that you make a commitment to a relationship or to helping something or someone, that you really are persevering, that you have a connection, that there is a connection that you want to make with another person or with an organization or with an animal or with your family or with your teacher, that there is a connection. And when you think about this, what makes a good connection? And we'll talk about that. For one thing, perhaps you think about a good listener makes a good connection. Someone who really pays attention, which is one of the fundamentals. And then we talk about empathy. And we think about empathy as really trying to understand what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. What is their experience of what is happening? Not what's our experience, or what we might do, or what we might think, or what we might feel. What is theirs? Giving. People who are kind want to give. They understand that we are all social beings. And because we're social beings, we have these connections. So also interest in the person, in their life, in not making them into something that you need them to be, but interested in their background, interested in what brought them to this moment, interested in their history, in their family's history, in their people's history, in their culture. We're interested It's an act of kindness to be interested. Nurturing, that we nurture ourselves, we nurture others. What is it that would help nurture this particular relationship? Because it may not be what would nurture ourselves, it may be something else, but we care, we're kind, and we want to try and discover what would nurture this relationship that would be meaningful to this other person. And we also need to be good observers. So when I say notice kindness, notice everything, savor a moment so that you can really be present. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in a little while, but really observe, look, and see, and pay attention. And there are exercises that we can use that will enhance this quality in us. How can we become really good observers? And then we want to be people who question. We want to be inquisitive and curious. Kind people generally are pretty curious. They want to know more. And they try and do this without judgment, without being critical, so that there is a space for people to be who they are. And the 10th fundamental of kindness is be yourself. We are all unique. We all bring to the party our special selves. And so many of us work so hard to fit in and not be who we are. Yet who we are is the essence of ourselves. And if we've been criticized for who we are, it's going to be awfully hard to feel good and comfortable about who we are. But a kind person will allow someone and encourage someone to be who they are and learn about why they are the way they are and love them and accept them. So the list is interchangeable, and there are lots and lots of other characteristics and qualities, but we kind of focused on the 10. And in the book, we talk about each one. We have a chapter about them, and we have stories of real life people, real life kids, who demonstrate these qualities in what they're doing. And since, as Kara said before, it's sort of a workbook, there are things that parents can do, there are things that kids can do, there are things that teachers can do, because we wrote this book oriented towards changing the lives of families and children. Yet since the book has come out, it's been such a wonderful joy for us, because we've been speaking at law firms and colleges and schools and companies and businesses, because it seems like everybody wants people to be a little kinder. And we all recognize the value of being kind. So how do we incorporate kindness? Well, as I said before, you start by being kind to yourself. And you pay attention. You really pay attention to how you feel. And then do something kind and see how that makes you feel. And see how you feel when someone is kind to you. And allow yourself to deserve that treatment. When someone gives you a compliment, hold it, feel it. Try not to push it away. And just let that become part of your narrative. Tell someone why you like them. Tell someone how they've helped you in your life, how they've been a role model, or a quality about them that you admire. These are acts of kindness. Smile at someone. Sit with someone who seems to be having a hard time. Just listen if they care to talk. And if they don't care to talk, just sit there, even if it's 6 feet apart. During this time, I've talked a lot about conversational hugs, because everybody would do anything to get a hug, but we're staying 6 feet apart. We're wearing masks. Does that mean we can't be connected? It means we have to work harder to be connected. So it means we examine our conversations. Are they meaningful? Are they space holders? Are they quick? Are they deep? When you ask someone how they're feeling or how they're doing and they tell you, can you be there and just hold it with them and just listen? Meaningful conversations that have to do with, gosh, I really wish I could see you. I remember when we took that fabulous walk together and we had such a good time. Or I remember when we took a trip, whatever it is, and you create the connection through your history. Or you look forward and say, after this is all over, I'd really love to go out to dinner with you. And oh my goodness, let's pick the restaurant. That you make a connection so that you have this conversational hug. And I think it's really important to do. I have a friend of mine who was 20 years my senior. She just recently passed away. And there was never a moment when I was in her company or anyone was in her company when she didn't share what she admired about that person. And it was just a sentence, but it could change your whole day. And I think that we can, as I said before, be good role models because kids and other adults are watching us and they're learning from us. So why not take the high road? Why not be kind? When something happens, ask yourself, what would be the kind response here? When you're about to be really critical of yourself, say, is that going to make me feel better or worse? How can I learn from this situation? What do I need to know? How can I be kind in telling myself what I should do differently next time? There's always a kind option. We just have to give ourselves permission to hear it, because heaven knows people do want to hear it. In a world that is so incredibly unkind sometimes, kindness can be perceived as weakness. It is not. You can be a very assertive person and be kind. One of the most important qualities that is now being looked for and searched after in business school is the quality of kindness, the quality of collaboration, the quality of cooperation, the qualities of empathy. This is what we realize helps people work together in teams. They can be encouraged and they can be human, they can make mistakes and they can be okay. When leaders show the mistakes they made and talk about what they learned from them and how it changed them, these are acts of kindness that they share with the people they work with. I think that what's really important is that we understand that kindness actually changes us. And Onal, if you don't mind putting the next slide up, I think we'll talk about exactly that. Thank you. Perhaps some of you have heard of the helper's high. And the helper's high was a phrase that was coined by Alan Lukes. And what happens is when we help others, we get a flood of endorphins. And this makes us want to act more kindly another time. It makes us want to do another kind act. The interesting thing, because our brain changes, is that it also helps the recipient. The recipient also wants to do kind acts. So they also have a change in their brain chemistry. And what's really remarkable is even when someone witnesses and observes or reads about a kind act, they get something called a moral elation, which again is a release of chemicals in our brains that act as a natural stress buster. And sometimes there is the release of oxytocin, which is the love hormone. And it's incredible because it really does change how we process information and how we function in the world. Kindness produces the endorphins that also serve as the, I said stress busters, but they're also the brain's natural painkiller. Thank you for this slide. What happens is that good experiences sometimes just slide away, and bad experiences or difficult experiences kind of connect like Velcro. And what we need to do, and this, by the way, was this Velcro and Teflon analogy came to us from Dr. Rick Hansen, who is a psychologist who does a lot of work in brain research and kindness and empathy in the brain. And when you think about it, our brains, we're really evolved to, that's okay, we can take this slide away now, thank you. Our brains have really evolved to be alert to trouble and to be able to survive. So if something smells bad, we say, oh, something smells bad. I have to, maybe, is there a gas leak or there's something? It is very, very basic to our survival. If we hear something that's threatening, we immediately have a response that is, oh my goodness, I have to remember this so that if I hear it again, I'll know that I have to be careful. What happens is we're wired for this. And this is, thank God we are. We need to nurture paying attention to all of the good that we see, because sometimes, like Velcro, it says, oh, that was nice, and it just slides away. Or yeah, that was fun, and it slides away. We have to pay attention. We have to be intentional and savoring all the good, all the kindness, all the gratitude, to change our brains, to create neural pathways that then allow us to have this release of endorphins and make us feel better. Well, what does that mean, make us feel better? This has a positive impact on depression. When we help others, when we're kind to ourselves and kind to others, we're focusing on them. We become much more satisfied with life, and our psychological health improves. Perpetually kind people have 23% less cortisol, which is a stress hormone. They age slower than the average population, and they typically report being able to handle their stresses much more healthfully. Acts of kindness create that emotional warmth that I mentioned before, this warm glow, even if you're just watching it. And that releases the hormone oxytocin, which I mentioned before. That's the love hormone. And it leads to a healthier heart, which causes blood pressure to go down. I sometimes will give talks just about the physiological changes when we're kind. So I'm not going to do that tonight. But I do want to repeat what I said before because it's very important. Witnessing a kind act, reading about a kind act, lowers your blood pressure, improves your heart health. It can also increase optimism and self-esteem. And people who are calmer and less depressed have increased feelings of self-worth, which gives them more energy. When you feel good, as I said, your physiology changes. So if you want to do a kind act for someone, just watch what happens. You probably will be motivated to do another kind act. The person that you did the kind act for, as I said before, will be motivated to do a kind act. And the person on the street who saw it will come home and tell their family about, you can't believe what I saw, it was so amazing. And if we try to create more of this in our lives, we will begin to look at the world through a lens of kindness. We will notice kindness, and we will try to become much more a participant in kindness. It can be a beacon of goodness, and kindness really does change ourselves, and it changes the people we meet. So I'd like you to think about not only what I asked you before, which is, in this situation, what's the kind thing to do, but understand that when you are kind, you are taking care of yourself, and you are having the kindness advantage, which is the name of the book that we wrote. Being kind can make us feel good, help us feel connected, and gives our life meaning. What we know about life is when people feel that their life has purpose, that they have meaning in their life, that they are much less likely to be depressed, they are much less likely to be anxious, and they will feel less lonely. It doesn't mean that you're never going to feel depressed. It doesn't mean you're never going to feel anxious, and it doesn't mean you're never going to feel loneliness. What it means is that you can develop the muscle, the kindness muscle, to build an attitude and understand what it takes to be resilient, to get you through when you feel depressed, anxious, lonely, lost, overwhelmed. That's what this is. We're not trying to create a world where these things are absent. We're human beings. Of course, these are feelings that we all have. And during COVID, many of us have had them much more than we ever had before. And some of us have had them and we never felt them before to the extent that we have. What kindness, empathy, compassion, particularly self-compassion, can do is to help to build our own inner resources that we can rely on so that we can be flexible, that we can learn about ourselves, about others, that we can adapt, and that we can recover. Things are not going to be back to normal, whatever that was, but that we can recover, and that we'll recover rather quickly, integrate everything that has happened and is happening, and go forward with these changes. That's really what the goal is and what the kindness advantage is. To be kind to yourself, to others, to make the world a better place. And as the world is having such difficulties, how can we all contribute to making a difference? Kindness is in fact protective. And one of the things that we can do is understand how we can try to keep protecting ourselves and focus on what we need in order to be helpful and to be kind to ourselves. I'm not going to go into a lot of research, and I did mention the service learning research, which I think is so applicable to this audience. But I really want to emphasize that kindness does lead to compassion, happiness, future success, improved self-esteem, and good mental and physical health. When we are able to have empathy and connect with another person and enable us to experience what they're thinking and feeling, we have the capacity to change the world, because you can change one person's view by letting them know that they're not alone. The underpinnings of empathy have been observed in children as young as 8 months old. Children as young as 3 months old show preference for helpers over hinderers at the Yale Baby Lab. There are studies with toddlers, 1.5, 2 years old, who really do give of their own candy to give to others as an act of kindness. And I know everybody's thinking, oh my goodness, the terrible twos. When you observe, when you really watch kids and you see how empathic they can be, the underpinnings of empathy, these are. When they look sad, when their companion is crying. And it's not because they're disturbed by the screams. They really want to reach out and often do. And you'll see them often putting their arms around. We have this in us. We just need to nurture it. It is never too early, and it is never too late. If we can see the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about self-care with kindness. About 10 years ago, I wrote a book called Sanity Savers, and there were 5 elements in that book that I wanted to focus on. And I'm just going to run through them right now because it really has to do with kindness. How do we take care of our body, our mind, and our spirit? Where do we get support? How can we foster kindness in relationships? What are our surroundings like, particularly now? How much nature are we getting in our lives? And how can we look to nature and our surroundings, even inside, to create peace? And what are we doing for stimulation, particularly if we're alone a lot? How are we stimulating our minds? Where are we getting our purpose? What is causing us to feel that we have meaning, and where are we curious? And then perhaps one of the most important has to do with savor. What are we doing to be present at this moment and appreciate this moment? Appreciate tasting the strawberry. Appreciate looking at a sunset and understanding that this moment is all we have. Kunal, if you don't mind the next slide, I'd appreciate it. Thank you for your help. I mentioned being present. For most people who are in school and most people who are working and most people who are alive in 2020, we are multitaskers. And one of the things I'd like you to think about is that we really can't be fully present when we are multitasking. Our brain can only focus on doing one thing well at a time. You know that if you're on the phone and you're driving. You might miss an exit, or you might not see that person who's coming up through your rear view, because you only can really focus on one thing well at a time. So when we multitask, we do each thing less well, and that causes us more stress. So thank you for that slide. We can put that away for a little while and see the next one, if you don't mind. Let's see the next one. Oops, let's go back. One of the things that I'd like you to do, thank you, I'm sorry I'm not clear. We can get rid of be present and we can just be present for a minute. So what I'd like, let's just stay with be present for a moment. Thank you, there I am, okay. So what I'd like you to do is let's be present in this moment. If you can take a breath with me. You can close your eyes if you want, and then breathe out. Just see how you feel. What are you noticing in your body? Can you feel a tingling in your hands? Can you take another breath and feel the air come all the way into your nostrils? And maybe you feel your belly go out. Just be present in this moment. As I said before, if you were eating a strawberry, instead of just popping it in your mouth, really taste it, savor it, savor the moment. Thank you, Unal. Let's have the next slide, and we'll talk about how important it is to keep our nutrition and our physical body in as good shape as possible. And I would add here also, in addition to the woman in the yoga pose and all those beautiful, colorful vegetables and fruits and getting outside on a bike, sleep. For those of you who are students, there probably is nothing more important than trying to get a good night's sleep. So try to develop a sleep ritual if you can. And by that, I mean turning off the news before you go to bed and really trying to develop a relationship with news that is a healthy one, especially now. Bad news makes us anxious, and it's really not compulsive that we watch the news as much as most of us do. To turn off the news before you go to bed, maybe an hour or even two before you go to bed, and to turn off devices, and to try not to have that light from the devices be the last thing that you see before you go to bed, is really useful. To listen to something calming. If you can, to take a warm shower, a warm bath. To maybe do a sleep ritual that is a progressive relaxation exercise, some guided meditation. Whatever it is, try to prepare yourself for sleep, because it's probably the most important thing that you can do, particularly if you're a student. In the next slide, the one here we have developed a support system. I didn't take a picture during COVID, and you'll see all of these people are connected and they're touching. And right now, we really can't do that. But what we can do is still feel the love and the connection between people, and the importance of having support. The importance of being supportive is really an act of kindness. So in the next slide that we'll look at, we'll see how you can nurture these positive relationships. I mentioned it before. I just want to look how many relationships we can have, and relationships with animals as well. And all of these people are trying to connect in ways that are meaningful to them. And again, much of it involves human touch, because that's what we do and that's who we are. And it's really difficult now, but it doesn't mean that we still can't nurture our positive relationships. And in the next slide, what I'd like to focus on, again, are the surroundings. Where are you? I know that you're in a beautiful campus. And if you can, instead of racing around the campus, stop and savor the moment and watch the pond and look at a beautiful tree as the leaves are changing now, and take a moment to really recognize how important these surroundings are. And as we go forward, the next slide, what I'd like to do is focus on, and I alluded to it when I asked you to just close your eyes, a daily meditation practice, because this is one of the kindest things you can do to yourself and for yourself. It can be a simple breathing practice, and just a simple breathing practice. It can be a prayer practice. Whatever it is, it will reduce blood pressure, it will be protective, and it will improve your heart health. All of these images are people outdoors in nature, but you can do this in a corner, in a beautiful corner. If you just go to the same place each day, that can be lovely. You can do a walking meditation as you walk and just take a breath with every single step. Thich Nhat Hanh, a Vietnamese monk, has many books about walking meditation and many teachings. And there are lots and lots of people online who you can follow. And right now, during COVID, so many teachers are available and have their teachings available for free, actually. And you can develop this part of yourself to really nurture your spirit. In the next slide, again, it's about being present and being mindful. Be aware of where you are at this moment and try not to run away from the feelings you have. Just recognize them and then understand that, okay, that's happening now. I'm here with it. I'm not going to let it run my life, but I'm noticing it. What can I do to deal with this? What can I do to work through this? What kindness can I offer myself in order to change my attitude about the situation? Because there's so much that we cannot control, but there's a lot that we can control. And we can control the way we bring ourselves to any situation. And we can practice kindness acts, and we can practice behaviors. We can practice gratitude. We can practice patience. We can practice paying attention. We can practice observing. There's so many things we can practice to build this muscle so that we'll be able to deal with whatever comes our way, COVID or no COVID. The next slide, Unal, if you don't mind, is about nurturing your spirit. So often, we're running so fast that we forget about our spiritual life. And I know that the human journey's all about nurturing the whole being. And we want very much, particularly those of you who are at Sacred Heart, to really nurture your spirit every day and fill yourself, fill your reservoir, so that you will be able to offer to yourself and others. And the next slide has to do, let's see the next slide. Yes, learn ways to calm your mind and relax your body. So focus on your breath, and you can relax your body with very simple movements. You don't have to take a class. If you can, great, but you can do 2 or 3 minutes throughout the day. And this has actually been proven by Richie Davidson, who is a neuropsychologist who has, among other things, mapped the brains of Buddhist monks to notice the value of meditation on the brain, and has fostered teaching meditation to people who don't have the life of living on a mountaintop in Tibet, but who can actually calm themselves while sitting on a bus, can calm themselves while they're cleaning a sink, that we can meditate as we are doing acts within our very life, our everyday life. And the next slide is Unal, do you have the next slide?
No, sorry. I think that was the last one.
Yeah, I think we have one more that has the website.
Got it.
Thank you. So I wanted to say that in the time that we have left, I'd like to answer questions and hear your comments. And if you'd like to learn more about some of these things that I've spoken about or have access to some articles and research, please feel free to visit the website, drdaleatkins.com or thekindnessadvantagebook.com, or to receive my newsletter, which is Sanity Savers and More. Unal, thank you very, very much for your help and for guiding me through some of those visuals. And now, Kara, I'd like to thank you again for having me join you. And if there are any questions and comments from the chat, let's have them.
Wonderful. Well, I just want to thank everyone so much. Dr. Atkinsdale, you exude kindness, and whether you're zooming in into my living room via the Today Show or whether you're visiting us here at Sacred Heart, you really project compassion and empathy and humility as well, which I think are just such admirable qualities. I am going to read out some of the chats. I also want to thank, though, Mike Lianazzi and the PR team for really helping to promote this lecture, and which really has been just a gift for us all. And I'm looking through the chat right now, and I'm just finding, so much enthusiasm for your talk. I mean, there are comments from nursing majors, from undecided majors who are just gaining so much wisdom, from exercise science majors who I'm sure appreciated the exercise, the physiology, I mean, the flexing of the kindness muscles. I love that idea. There's students zooming in interested in service learning. One person said that the book, that this reminds this person of a book called Humankind. Another talked about the connections to coursework. So it's just really buzzing, and I'm so thrilled and so excited. And I do want to open it up, but I guess maybe what I'll do is ask the first question, which is just perhaps this can kind of.
Thank you. Before you do, may I
Yes.
just make a comment in relation to the nursing students? Right now, at this moment, there's a summit that's just ending, but I want anybody interested in the healthcare fields to know that there is a magnificent summit, mindfulness in healthcare, and so many of the leaders in nursing and mindfulness have been speaking for 5 days. Five speakers a night. I mean, it's been amazing. So if you go to the, I can send this to you, you can send it out, or just go to the Mindfulness and Healthcare Summit. And it's been free, and it's some of the greatest leaders all about really trying to have kindness and empathy as part of it. It's particularly around COVID, because the first responders particularly have been working so hard and exuding such incredible empathy and kindness, and they're many cases really suffering. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you. So yes, your question.
Thank you. So, and just a comment that came in, I adored this talk. I try to practice acts of kindness every day, and now I feel like I have a toolkit. I mean, they're coming in really, really. So my question actually goes to, so Sacred Heart University has been rated by the Princeton Review as having a campus with some of the happiest students. And I think what's really remarkable about the student body here is that they don't take happiness as hedonism, but they really kind of interpret happiness as sort of service, and they're constantly involved in their community. And I think that there's true joy on this campus, but it involves giving to others. So I guess my question is, you associated kindness and compassion with qualities of strength and leadership. And what would be your sort of advice to this next generation, who they are going to be the ones to sort of not only contribute to the world, but help us practice more meaningful and civil dialogue, which I think is something that our world and society are in great need of. So I guess, any further advice, connections as to how the next generation can use kindness to bolster their leadership skills?
Thank you for that question. I think that understand what your moral compass is and never lose sight of it, and act in accordance with what that is, and be the whole person. It's not difficult. Well, let me not say that. It can be difficult, but there's simplicity about kind of what's right, what's wrong. Is it right to insult one? Is it wrong to insult someone? Is it right to try and hit someone when they're down? Or is it right to pick them up? It is not so hard. And I think that when we are in a moment of time, when we're in a culture, when we're in a society where insults and bullying and trying to make someone feel badly about themselves, or not realizing that we are all connected. We are all connected. It's not the other. When you realize that it's one human family, I think that you won't lose your North Star. And again, I started off by talking about the golden rule. And it's all about the golden rule. Let us try to treat other people as we would like to be treated. The leaders who show compassion, who have humanity, who understand that in many cases, there but for the grace of God go I, that we all have a responsibility to serve and to lead and to help others. And I think that somewhere it gets muddied and it gets complicated and it gets really competitive and it gets, it's never enough. Understand who you are, what your values are, what your purpose is, and surround yourself with people of like mind who may have, and hopefully do have, different ways of looking at the world, different political opinions. Try to understand how to listen. Try to understand and develop the skills of being patient and understanding why people feel the way they do. This is true leadership. And never lose sight that we are all connected. And we are here to serve each other, to help each other. Human beings are social beings. And I think that that's what we need. It's, if you look at the 10 fundamentals that Amanda and I put in the book and add your own, you'll find the answer. But listen to your body. You'll often get the feeling that you need as to whether or not this is the right thing or the wrong thing to do, not in your head. You'll feel it in your gut, and then it'll go to your heart, and then you'll interpret it. But listen to your gut and listen to your heart.
Thank you. We have actually a question in addition to the countless words of praise. The comment and questioner, thank you so much for this talk. It was so inspiring. In the face of the pandemic, would you talk a little bit more about how fear and concern about the disease is affecting the emotional states of many of people?
Yes, thank you for that question. It is affecting our society dramatically. We have never seen the rates of anxiety and depression and rising rates of suicide. The fear and anxiety about one's safety and one's family safety. I think part of it is the messaging, the communication. People are questioning what's real, what's not real. They're questioning who to believe, what to believe. Facts are coming that are being changed, that are being challenged. It's very difficult. And living in a time of uncertainty is one thing. Living in a time which this is, and living in a time when one feels the rug is consistently being pulled out from under you is really hard. Now, just by nature, some of us are more change hardy than others, and some of us are more anxious than others. So certain of us have buttons pushed that may not be pushed in other people. And I think we really need to be more compassionate. In fact, I just wrote about this in my most recent Sanity Saver newsletter. I just wrote about how we seem to have compassion for people who have underlying physical disabilities or physical issues to protect them from COVID. But I'm not seeing that same kind of compassion with people who have mental illness or emotional dysregularities. And it's really concerning me. So I think that one of the answers I have is, again, Never was there a more important time to really practice self-compassion and pay attention. If you can't focus, if you're more anxious, if you don't want to go out, and also understand what works for you. Maybe your friends are going out and they're going to a bar or whatever, and you're not comfortable with that. Don't go. And it's hard because there's so much pressure. If you're not comfortable with someone who comes in the dorm or puts their mask off and is close by, whatever it is, and for each of us is different. Find the space in yourself where you can calm yourself and perhaps find the language and say, if you don't mind, I'm just not comfortable with this. Or it's hard for me. This is hard for me. Would you mind? And if they say, forget it, go to a place where you can feel a bit more comfortable. It's very hard. And you'll have to deal with your own personal responses, which have to do with anger, disappointment, sometimes rage, and find ways. This is one of the reasons that I really emphasize it's so important to find moments every day to practice a calming practice, to participate in a calming practice, so that you physically can feel the difference in your body. Your head may be spinning around, but calm your body in ways that you can comfort yourself. Just squeeze your fingers really, really, really tight and then release them. Shake your hands really, really fast and then let them sit. Move around, dance, jump. All these things help you to release tension and then come back and find your center. Understand that this business of the new normal, this is not normal. This is not normal. This is where we are right now. But it will change. I don't know what it's going to look like. And life will change. And we will behave differently. But right now, we need to adapt. We need to get through it. We need to be flexible. And we need to have hope and optimism. And the way we have hope and optimism is to understand where we were strong at other times in our life. What did we get through? How did we get through it? What worked before may or may not work now, but the knowledge that we got through something before is very powerful. Understand how your ancestors got through difficult times. Now is a time to read inspirational stories about your own family, to hear inspirational stories from your own family about how people got through really difficult times, and to also read about heroes, read about role models and say, I wonder how they did it. What did they use? What did they draw on? What qualities? These are the things that help us get through. Does it make us unafraid? No. Does it help us live with the fear? You betcha. And that's what we need to do. We have to get rid of this perfectionistic goal and say, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible person because I'm doing this and I'm doing that. No, we are human beings. And human beings react. We have all been assaulted. And when we see things that are challenging and difficult, when we can't attend a loved one's funeral, when we can't hold someone's hand when they're dying, when we cannot do the things that help us stay connected and cemented to the people we love and the people we respect, we're not supposed to do a dance. It is not okay. But we can be okay in the not okay of it. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I know we're getting a little low on time, but we have a couple moments just for some questions. Someone asked about the last slide. Would you put that up again, how we can sign up for your newsletter? There's
Yes,
interest. Is that the Sanity Savers and more?
Yes. You can do it through my website. I'm also on Facebook. And in fact, the newest newsletter is on Facebook today because it just came out. So it's Dr. Dale Atkins on Facebook, or you can get it through my website, drdaleatkins.com. And I really do write about what people ask me to write about. I mean, this most recent article was in direct response to a close friend of mine who I reacquainted with actually after almost 50 years, believe it or not, through the book. And we were talking about the difficulties that her son was having. And it sparked my thinking about, yes, what is the matter with us? And let's shake it up a bit. And let's try and pay attention to what we need now. And what we need now, to paraphrase the world, is what the world needs now is love. The world needs love. The world needs patience. We need to have kindness. And we need it for ourselves, and we need it for those who are having a really tough time. And we should assume that everybody's having a hard time. And we shouldn't be embarrassed about saying, I'm really having trouble focusing on this. And, I wonder about my concentration and all of this, because that's the new normal. And it's not permanent. But if we allow it to be, and, we don't have to drop our standards, but we certainly have to raise our compassion. And we don't stop having goals, but we do have to have realistic goals, and we have to have reasonable expectations for ourselves and for the people around us. And I think that will be very helpful during this COVID period.
Well, Dr. Atkins, I mean, you have given so much, contributed so much here. We have words of praise from artists and mindfulness instructors and sociology majors and curious students and really faculty I'm seeing loving the idea of inspirational stories. And, I cannot thank you enough. I cannot thank everyone else enough. Please know that, again, I want to just leave you with this, that Dr. Atkins, as accomplished and renowned as she is, remains kind, empathetic, compassionate, and humble. And that should be a role model, I think, for us all. So thank you so much, Dr. Atkins.
Thank you, Kara. I wish you well. I wish all of us as much health as possible, and just take it one day at a time and be kind to yourselves and each other. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining tonight's conversation. To learn more, visit sacredheart.edu.